A man was carefully cleaning his newly purchased antique desk when he accidentally discovered a hidden compartment. With careful handling, he opened the compartment to find a fountain pen, a bottle of women's perfume, and a thick stack of letters. Upon closer examination, he realized these were diaries from 100 years ago. Unbeknownst to anyone, a woman 100 years ago was skillfully opening a drawer, pressing lightly inside to reveal the same hidden compartment. The woman was shocked to find her diary had vanished. Little did she know at this very moment Scott was reading her letters. The writer Liz was a wealthy young lady destined to marry a man she did not love, arranged by her father. Despite her reluctance, the era dictated that women had no say in their marriages. Through the lines of the letter, Scott could feel Liz's pain and struggle, even picturing her helpless and fragile face. The next morning, he discussed this with his mother, who romantically suggested he write a letter to the woman from 100 years ago. His mother then produced a stamp from over a century ago, urging Scott to send his letter through the only century-old post office in town. Although skeptical, Scott whimsically wrote a letter, encouraging Liz to seek true love and jokingly mentioned that her soulmate might be 100 years in the future. After writing, he couldn't help but laugh at himself, then drove to the post office mentioned by his mother only to find it deserted. With no other option, he left his letter in the only mailbox there. Miraculously, a maid from 100 years ago actually received a letter. Meanwhile, Liz was on a date with a man she disliked. After a tiring day, she returned home and told her father she didn't love him. Her father, concerned about her being 29, insisted on the marriage, believing it was for her best. Liz, feeling trapped, listened to her father's advice. Casually opening the letter, she was shocked by its contents. She quickly excused herself to rest, sending her father away, then rushed to open the desk's hidden compartment, only to find the letters had vanished. Meanwhile, Scott was watching a football game on TV when he heard a noise from the desk. Confused, he opened the hidden compartment to find a letter had mysteriously appeared. Astonished and disbelieving, he hesitated before opening the letter. The letter read, "Sir, receiving your letter surprised me. Who are you, and how do you know of my secret compartment? I am puzzled and feel as though I'm in an unreal dream." From a shocked Liz, what seemed absurd had become reality, leaving Scott astonished and developing an inexplicable affection. He hurriedly wrote back to Liz, detailing everything, including his name, address, and how he came to possess the desk. Liz felt a whirlwind of emotions upon realizing she was corresponding with a man from a century later. She kept this a secret from her family and started exchanging frequent letters with Scott. Liz envied Scott's circumstances and was intrigued by her secrets being known, yet she knew nothing about him and was curious about life 100 years later. Scott gradually described life a century later, even teaching Liz how to bake a cake through his letters. Despite never having met, a warmth unlike any other quietly blossomed within him. Liz's face brightened with more smiles each day, eagerly anticipating Scott's letters. Scott longed to know more about Liz to truly feel her presence. One day, Scott decided to visit Liz's family home, as per the address in the letters, only to find it abandoned, with only a maid remaining. As Scott walked down the stairs disappointed, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. At the same moment, Liz, as if halted by a mysterious force while ascending the stairs, felt a cross-temporal touch that seemed to intertwine their souls. Although unbelievable, their feelings were incredibly real. Returning home, Scott hurriedly wrote everything that happened to Liz. Liz, unable to wait, eagerly read his letter, her lips curving into a beautiful smile at the familiar handwriting and tender words. What shocked Liz even more was that the touch wasn't her imagination. Scott felt her presence on the stairs as if he had touched her, which was astonishing. Liz quietly wiped away her tears, longing to meet the man she loved immediately. Being able to touch each other across a century was a divine gift. Meeting in person seemed far more challenging. She could only pray that Scott would never cease writing, maintaining their soul connection. To clearly know each other's appearance, they agreed to exchange photos. Liz dressed up and captured her most beautiful self, her eyes gleaming with joy for Scott. However, the photo Scott sent was accidentally dropped by a servant. Anxious about not receiving a reply, Liz decided to seek another chance to touch by visiting Scott's city. She confided her secret to her most trusted sister, instructing her to place her letters back home in the hidden compartment. As Liz rode through the forest in a carriage, Scott, participating in a bicycle race, suddenly crashed, fortunately without life-threatening injuries but with an abnormal heart rate. Despite treatment, Scott strangely remained unconscious. Meanwhile, Liz encountered a colonel and instantly felt a familiar connection, with mutual affection quickly developing. The colonel, feeling the same, waited in a room and pretended to bump into her by chance. Their mutual attraction and the colonel's tactics made everything seem natural. In the following days, they spent time together, rowing and growing closer. Liz mentioned in her letters to Scott how this felt like he was right there with her. Yet she knew it was only her imagination. She was facing a real colonel who had genuine affection for her. They shared deep conversations and heartfelt confessions. The good times were short-lived. During a ball, the colonel announced he had been ordered to the front lines. They arranged to meet at the gazebo that evening. Despite the heavy heart, they shared their most beautiful smiles and naturally kissed, silently pledging to be together for life. Simultaneously, Scott suddenly woke up in the hospital. Eagerly reading the letters in the hidden compartment, He was genuinely happy for their beautiful love story. Learning that his beloved colonel was about to join the Civil War, Scott quickly searched the death list from that era on his computer. The list clearly stated the colonel would die on July 3rd. With Liz's last letter dated June 28, Scott hurriedly wrote to Liz, urging her to prevent the tragedy. Unexpectedly, the post office caught on fire that night. Desperate to spare Liz from heartbreak, Scott braved the flames to ensure his letter was mailed. Liz anxiously opened the letter and was shocked to learn of the colonel's imminent death. She rushed to the front lines only to be told the colonel's unit had nearly been wiped out. After a tense search among the wounded, she found the colonel bloodied and near death, who passed away in her arms. Scott also awoke from a dream, feeling a mysterious connection. Everything felt so real yet so surreal. When the nanny found the lost letter with Scott's photo, Liz was shocked by the resemblance to the colonel. She realized that perhaps fate had its own plans and the concept of past and future lives might be real. This revelation was disrupted by Scott's girlfriend, who discovered their correspondence. Confronted, Scott's explanation seemed feeble, leaving his girlfriend trembling with rage. "This is absurd, insane, what are you trying to do?" Scott confessed, "I've fallen in love with that girl." His girlfriend's tears flowed uncontrollably, unable to accept this reality, believing it to be a poor excuse for a breakup. The hidden compartment in the desk made a noise, revealing a letter from Liz. His girlfriend thought him mad, but upon seeing the photos of Liz and the colonel, who looked exactly like Scott, she was dumbfounded. Scott apologized, affirming his genuine love for Liz. Though heartbroken, there was no deceit or concealment. After his girlfriend left, Scott revisited Liz's ancestral home, entering the room she once occupied, feeling her presence. Likewise, Liz in another time sensed Scott's presence, whispering how much she missed him. As if hearing her, smiled with happiness. However, this moment was interrupted by the maid bringing Liz's old belongings. Sifting through the ancient texts filled Scott with sweetness until an old photo surfaced. The maid, in disbelief, couldn't understand how Scott appeared in Liz's letters, and no explanation would convince her otherwise. Scott, holding flowers, slowly approached Liz's grave, gently touching the inscriptions on the tombstone, reading her steadfast vows of love as tears blurred his vision. Suddenly, a dog joyfully ran up to him, its owner quickly coming over to restrain it and apologize, remarking with a smile that the dog must really like him to jump on him like that. Facing this familiar face, Scott was utterly stunned. He had thought this century-spanning love had come to an end, yet fate had them meet again. Although they had never met in real life, the girl's every smile and frown seemed deeply etched in his soul, forming an indissoluble bond. Watching the girl wave goodbye, Scott didn't say much but silently followed her, then quickly caught up to ask if she would like to have a cup of coffee. The girl happily accepted. Just like the encounter with the colonel 100 years ago, though it was their first meeting, it felt like a connection of 1,000 years. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this.